I see ageism everywhere. When old pals cringe at public mention of how long they've known each other instead of savoring their shared history. When men and women feel compelled to lie about their age on online dating sites. When people bridle at being kindly offered a seat on the bus. On billboards and television, hospitals and hotels, over dinner and on the subway. At age who doesn't need a facelift? A poster announcing a subway station renovation asked brightly. And the incessant barrage of messages from every quarter that consigns the no longer young to the margins of society. In our mindless absorption of these messages and numb collusion in our own disenfranchisement. Despite the 20th century's longevity boom, age bias is only beginning to bleep on the cultural radar. It's the last socially sanctioned prejudice. We know that diversity means including people of different races, genders, abilities, and sexual orientations. Why is age typically omitted? Racist and sexist comments no longer get a pass, but even blinks when older people are described as worthless, or incompetent, or out of it, or boring, or even repulsive. Suppose we could see these hurtful stereotypes for what they are, not to mention the external policies and procedures that put the ism after age. Suppose we could step off the treadmill of age denial and begin to see how ageism segregates and diminishes our prospects. I hope over the next 2 days, that is what we'll do. Step off the treadmill, consider what a less age-segregated society might look like, and talk about what you, me, and all of us together can do to get there. We're very fortunate to start off that conversation with 3 great people. They all are deserving of very long introductions, but I'm only giving the briefest one. Their full bios are available on the conference website. So I encourage you to go there and look and read more about them. But at the end, that's Ashton Applewhite. She's the author and she's an author and advocate, and she wrote those words. I hope you like them. They're hers. That I just read without credit in her seminal book, "This Chair Rocks: A Manifesto Against Ageism." Leanne Shirley is a social gerontologist and president and CEO of the American Society of Asian, and Pooja Tilvawala is an award-winning global climate justice leader who founded and is executive director of the Youth Climate Collaborative. Thank you all for coming today and for helping to start off the Century Summit. So let's get to know you a little bit as people. I'm going to ask sort of a bunch of questions. It's one of my failings as a moderator is I like to ask like 6 questions at a time. But let's start at the end. And I'm going to ask you, Ashton, why should people care about ageism? What makes this a topic that, in the age of lots and lots of topics and things to care about and get angry about, frankly, why should ageism be on the cultural agenda?
You know, aging is a extraordinary, excuse my gravelly voice. Aging is an utterly unique process. The longer we live, the more different from each other we become.
Do you need water?
I have water, thank you.
All right.
I feel better than I sound. So the answer to that question is utterly individual too. I mean, I got into it because the messages, I hit my 50s, I looked in the mirror, I'm like, oh crap, it's happening to me too. And I thought I would be exempt, which I think we all do. I think that's human. And the messages were so negative, uniformly negative, it made me angry. It's like, why don't we hear the whole side of the story? So to me, the answer, it sounds preachy, but it's from a social justice perspective. The scary stuff is real, but we need to tell the other story. We need to recognize that ageism harms us lifelong. Women in need are never the right age, as Laura pointed out. And it just corrodes our self-esteem and the way we see our futures and our interpersonal relationships and on and on.
I'm just curious, was there a moment in time when it sort of hit you?
No, I'm too nerdy and thinky. It was just like a process of figuring out how pervasive it was and how damaging it was.
Yeah. How about you, Leanne? Is there a moment when ageism became an issue for you personally, or for how you thought of it as sort of an injustice that needs to be tackled?
Yeah,
Is that not working?
Okay. Thank you. You know, I think I didn't have the words for it, but I first became aware of aging and ageism watching my grandmothers as I was growing up. Both were incredibly instrumental in my life, and I could see the older they got and when their bodies changed, their presence and authority was sort of diminished. And I didn't have the words to understand what was happening back then, but working through gerontology degree programs, I realized it was an intersection of sexism and ageism that was at play there. But, you know, to go back to your first question, why care? It's here. It's now. Aging is happening. It's something to be celebrated. It's an accomplishment. And I think we all need to care about it. And every sector out there really needs to be leaning in, figuring out how the work going on across our economy intersects with this really special moment in time. And it's time to fix the harms that ageism and the harms and the limitations that ageism brings us.
So I'm curious about your grandmothers. How did it affect them? I mean, how did it affect their sense of
it pissed them off.
self-worth? Did it? All right. Well, that's a good response.
Yeah, they were frustrated and they spoke louder, to be honest with you. But sometimes the louder they spoke, the more to the side they were pushed. And I saw that and I thought that was normal. And I thought that's just how it had to be. But I'm glad to know that's not true.
Yeah. Pooja, sort of the same question for you. When did we tend to, and Laura made that point right away, which is ageism is not just for older people, but it's usually associated with older people. When did it become an issue for you? When did you start thinking about it?
Yeah, so I feel like entering different phases of life, your parents or society or your culture kind of feels like you should have a certain level or certain types of things accomplished or met certain goals. Like I'm nearing 30, I'll turn 30 in October this year, and I'm not married, I don't have any kids, you know? And so there's certain expectations that come with reaching certain ages. And if you don't meet them, then it's like, there are some ageist comments that you do get, right? And also being a young person, you know, in climate activism, or just in social movements in general, sometimes we're not given the same trust with responsibility or decision making that other age groups may be given. And so I've experienced it in that way as well. But there's been a lot of good positive progress that we've seen. Like once ageism is recognized, which is a good point of it being labeled, you know, and then you start thinking of solutions for it, then people start creating programs for it. Like we've seen more intergenerational boards and advisory councils, and even at the international, like at COPs, the conferences on climate change, we're seeing young people being trained to be negotiators with their older peers. And so once it's identified, then you can start making solutions and then start bridging those divides, which is nice.
It's interesting to me that you felt that in the climate space, which I actually associate sort of activism there with young people, right there. I mean, they're famous young people who internationally, globally famous sort of young people. Is it the case, do you think, that if it's a challenge inside climate issue associated with young people, it must be broader outside of climate? It's probably even a more difficult issue.
Well, I think part of it is like even the association that you just mentioned, right? Young people are associated with activism in the sense of protesting, marching, etc. But we're also making decisions, we're designing programs, we're fundraising, we're mobilizing communities, we're doing a lot more with our different roles, but that all seems to be, you know, hidden, and what's put in the headlines and what people think of mostly is the protesting and stuff. And so we're trying to kind of get through that wall, get through that barrier, and be like, you know, we're more than loud voices or, you know, mobilizers. And that's been a challenge. Yeah.
All right. So Ashton, let me go back to you with this question. You know, when we think of isms, so you've written a lot about isms and the destructive effect they have. But usually when the victims of isms are people without power. They're people with less money, they're people, they're women, people of color, people with disabilities, they often have less say in society. Older people, I mean, they got lots of money. We have, the last 3 terms have the 3 oldest presidents in American history. Why is it, so react to that. I don't even know how to formulate the question. Why is this a
Why aren't older
problem
people more powerfully visible in society?
Yeah,
I mean,
if they got
I
the
think the
power.
answer is that, some people are. To pick the obvious example, look at Congress, which is mostly gray heads.
Yeah.
But it is no coincidence that most of them are also male and white. It's not actually age that makes the difference. Otherwise, we wouldn't have just elected a 78-year-old. Is that how old he is?
He is
Right?
78.
But he doesn't read as old because he's brash and vigorous and forceful. And those are not characteristics we associate with age. So I think we need to zoom up, always zoom out a bit and look at where each individual's power comes from. Congress looks like that because of long established systems under our capitalist system, and it takes time to accrue power, but there are millions of older people who indeed are not visible, but it depends on their economic status. I mean, it is astonishing, though, that society does not pander more to older people, given our purchasing power. But you need to look not at the age of the person, I think, but at the other factors that make them visible or less visible on terms that matter in our, frankly, racist, sexist, capitalist society.
So actually, let me ask this of Leanne, which is, isn't the real answer to that question, we're all ageist about ourselves? I mean, somehow society has convinced us to dislike ourselves, right?
I mean, in the beginning, the passage you kindly read, we are barraged by these messages about how horrible it's going to be to get old, about how tragic it is to encounter any kind of incapacity. And unless we stop to challenge them, which is uncomfortable, they do become part of our identity, and none of us are free of that. Everyone is ageist to some degree, which is why, Buddha probably said this, or Einstein, but all change starts within. The first step is to become aware of it, is to name it, and to see how we have absorbed those ideas and how we can start to change the way we think about our own aging, and then take that out into the world.
Leanne, what do you think about that?
Yeah, what's coming to my mind right now, Pooja, I think you did a beautiful job of explaining why generational labels can be so limiting. It's true. The younger generations right now are often reduced to, in the best of instances, activism. In the worst, entitled, all of the cultural tropes that we all seem to be aware of when it comes to whatever generation you belong to. And I think about, an interesting and maybe accessible way to confront your own sense of ageism is to think about how you relate to the stereotypes that our society puts on whatever generation you're in. Just challenge your position within, the group that people have assigned you to. Think about how you're the same and different. Think about how the people you know and don't know are the same and different. I know that'll come up later on the agenda, this notion of generations. But yeah, we are an ageist society, and I think we are gaining ground, though. So
Pooja, let's pick up that. I mean, there is a notion, often grounded in fact, like the older generation, they've had the opportunity, they have the wealth, they leave in a lot of problems, climate being just one of many, to younger people to sort out. Why should people in the younger generation care about an issue that is mostly associated with older people? Not all, obviously, let's grant that, but mostly associated with how they feel and think about themselves.
I want to actually make one point first. There are some changes that happen culturally, societally, but then the workplaces and homes have to kind of catch up to those changes. For example, my dad has been working at his workplace for years, but then sometimes, younger people will come in and they'll start getting promoted or getting different opportunities in a much quicker time than, he ever did, or even for him, promotions might still be happening slowly, right? And that's good progress, that's good change, right? But then for those older generations that do still want to move up, that still have that ambition, and they're seeing that and they're not getting those same opportunities or that treatment. It's like, how do you, it just makes me think, right? Like, how do we try to get these workplaces and other, subcultures within society to catch up to, the societal changes without leaving groups behind? And how do we kind of bring these honest conversations to these workplaces? Because it does mess with people's well-being too, and mental health.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, you think that progress is being made. So the quote that I had from Ashton's book was, age bias was only beginning to bleep on the cultural radar. That was written in 2016 or 2015 or so. It's almost a decade later. I'd like to get your sense of change. Are we making progress on this issue? What's the are the goalposts moving? What's your sense of progress?
Yeah, I think we're making progress, at least in the climate space. As I said, there's more intergenerational decision-making bodies, and that allows the opportunity for people across generations to actually speak with each other. And even if they've come in with biases, they might leave having worked with people of other generations, like having changed opinions about what somebody from that generation might be capable of, or and that goes in both directions always. And then for the workplace stuff, I actually forgot the comment I was going to say.
Okay, we'll come back to it, but let me just ask Leanne, and Ashton, we'll come to you then. Are we making progress on this? I mean, you have sort of an institutional responsibility in the American Society for Aging. What's the official word on it?
Yeah, I think in some ways, yes, and in other ways, woefully no. But this takes a long time. Social change takes a long time, and we need to stay the course. But I think something I've been thinking a lot about lately is the limitations of using such a big word like aging or old. Think about all of the domains. Think about what we mean, what we're actually talking about. If I asked 20 of you to talk about something to do with getting old, I bet something about physical change would come up, something about work, something about your relation to family. We use one word to talk about so many things. So I think to the extent that we can keep getting more specific about what we're actually talking about and the changes that we actually want to see, the more forward that progress will go. I don't have a good I don't even know what I mean by that yet, but when
Well, you have about 45 seconds because I'm going to come to that question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll think on it.
So
but
you
yeah,
got plenty of time to reflect on it.
Yeah.
So Ashton, let me just ask you this.
Are we making progress?
give me a whack at that.
What's that?
Give me a whack at that.
Yeah, no, it is. But I want to preface it by saying, so not very many weeks ago, I woke up and my social media was flooded with videos of Ashton Applewhite and Jane Fonda, and you're like famous now. So like you're on the cultural radar, and that may not have been. That seems to me a little different than 10 years ago. Is that true, or does it just happen to be the people
Is it
I
true
know
that
happen
I'm
to watch
famous?
that?
I'll leave that up to the group. Jane
Yeah.
Fonda is famous.
Yeah.
I'm not
There are
famous.
degrees of
but,
famous in this world. Yeah.
But it was a great video, and I never got to meet her, so no, I can't introduce you. I wish
Really?
I had. I've admired her all my life.
So can I just pause on that for? It was like it appeared like you were the two best friends,
Oh, I
right,
know.
on the video.
All
So
in the
this is
editing. We
magic
were
of
never even
editing.
in the
Okay.
same room.
I'm a little
Tragically.
disappointed.
So I'm not famous. Okay, I'll confess. I am an activist, and I love your point about Pooja, that we think of young people always in the streets, not doing all the back leg work, and vice versa. We need more older people in the streets, and we need the work of younger activists to be recognized, that we're all doing all the things. We all care about people of all ages. That is one overarching reason to care. We are making so much progress. I mean, granted, I'm an activist and I've been at this for a long time, so it's sort of my job or my personality. But look at the topic of this conference. It's about ageism. Look at the topic of the upcoming American Society and Aging conference. It's about ageism. even the like horrible discourse around, I'm sorry about my voice, believe me, about around the too old to be president. Across the political spectrum, no matter what people's opinion was, they said, I know this is ageist, but that old fart should, totter off stage. That is huge progress. The first step is awareness. When I started doing this, half the people I talked to or more didn't know what ageism is. And we start with awareness. Ageism Awareness Day is now a national, internationally recognized day on October 9th. There, and one brief mention of the Old School Hub, oldschool.info, resource of anti-ageism resources. When we started in 2018, we didn't have a campaign section. Now there are over 30. A global movement is underway. I have the merch to prove it. So that's evidence. There's over 30. The UK is launching the second installment of its national campaign with billboards and tube station stuff next month. The World Health Organization is 3 years into its global campaign. It is really happening.
All right. So can we put up the first slide, first few from the poll? Let's see if this works. Oh, it does. So just a little bit of detail. I think everyone can see that except for us on stage. So this is the age of the people responded. Roughly 400 people filled out the survey, and thank you for that. Next slide, please. This is what I alluded to in the conversations with Laura and Martha, 77% women. And then here's a question that I want to ask you all about. Next slide, please. So ageism in American society impacts my ability to age successfully. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, neither agree nor disagree. Most people agree with it. You probably would expect that in people who have signed up for a conference like this. I want to ask you, start with Ashton. First of all, how do you react to those numbers? And let's be specific. How does ageism affect people's ability to age successfully?
It's such a big question, and I already sort of, if we think back to Leanne's point, we are aging from the minute we're born. It's not something sad that old people do, right? And it intersects with every aspect of being human and every domain of human society. So there are 10,000 answers to that. I think I will choose its effect on health. I mentioned that the World Health Organization launched a 10-year campaign. It's not the World Old People Organization. They're in the job of increasing health span along with lifespan, because everyone everywhere is living longer. And they realized that the most effective thing they could do was to mount, it's a wonderful campaign. You can find it on oldschool.info. I don't make any money off it. Was to challenge ageism in ourselves and in the culture at large. People who have more, it's usually framed as people with more positive attitudes towards aging. I like to say people with more realistic attitudes of aging, right? A fact-based attitude rather than fear-based. We live longer, we recover quicker from severe disability, we walk faster, and I think we live better because we're not as hostage to sort of this default, it's all gonna suck, uh-oh, I can't mention my age mentality, which is so damaging. So, and we know also that bringing people together of all ages is a proven intervention that reduces ageism. So, we have all these tools now, and I think whether you think population aging is a fantastic gift, and I agree with Laura on this, of course, but it also is a challenge, huge challenge. So if we are going to meet this appropriately, we need to educate ourselves about aging and take advantage of these tools. And I think the health angle, whether you love old people or hate old people, you don't want us to be sick and cost money. So I think the health effects of ageism need to be widely promoted. I'm hoping someone out there will fund an anti-ageism campaign as a public health initiative, the way they've done in Australia. That's where my merch is from. In the UK, all over the place.
I think the thing we've learned today is that there's merch available. So do not pass on this opportunity.
If anyone doubts.
Yeah. Leanne, so same question, but can you also sort of talk about the theory of change? Like how do you, Ashton said something, I think which is both seemingly obvious, but also powerful. The best way to tackle it is to bring people of different ages together.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds simple, but in a society that's really divided by age, that sounds hard. How do you think about the theory of change? How do we, as a group, and I'm gonna ask you this question, Pooja, individually and collectively, start thinking about what impacts we can have?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I want to say another symptom of ageism, which will relate to, I think, the theory of change, is the lack of any sort of real, earnest national long-term care system and a serial underfunding and defunding of services and programs that all of us and our families are likely to need the older we get. So I just wanted to tack on to your, it's more about health. It's just your ability to live as a human in the community. And I think, when I love a theory of change. I came from the evaluation research world, so it's music to my ears, but awareness is the first step. And I think a really important tactic for elevating awareness is to change the conversation about aging from one of them to one of us. One of we. This is something we're all doing. Just as important is to think about, the big audacious goal on the other side. What are we all trying to accomplish here? I think social change is so much more effective when you can create a vision. And I think it's fair to say, especially here at Stanford, we are all working towards a reality where we have everyone has a full and fair shot of longevity. That's the future that we're working. That's why we're raising awareness. And we need people saying it. We need people doing the work to say, this is ageism. This is how it harms us. Here's how we can do it differently. And we need people that already jump to that big, audacious goal at the same time. People that, from other sectors that just naturally pull in older market segments and do it in a way that is reflective of reality. People that don't need to say that they're doing ageism work, but they just model that vision for an age-inclusive society where we all have a full, fair shot at longevity.
All right, Pooja, you're kind of in the business of making change, right? So that's, how do you think about, actually, what lessons did you learn from climate and the struggle against powerful interests to make change there? What lessons have you learned there that might be useful in the ageism sector, if there's such a thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in climate, but in all aspects of life, really, like when I think of ageism, I think that it comes with, expectations and assumptions, these two things, right? Assumptions about what you can and can't do at certain ages, how you are mentally, physically, etc. And then expectations of what you should be able to do or should not be able to do at a certain age. In the face of expectations and assumptions, whether it's based on age or race or gender, etc., you really have to learn to be resilient to those kinds of comments and stay focused. Even with my climate work, I've learned that, when you have our president withdrawing us from the Paris Agreement again, or from the World Health Organization, etc., you have to still stay focused on your work and kind of just learn to ignore the expectations and the assumptions and just keep going. Because at the end of the day, there's so many people that you can find that are supportive of the work, that are willing to work together to make those changes. And, it takes a lot of effort and skill to be able to kind of tune out the other stuff, but you kind of just have to. You have to learn to stay focused, find your people, and keep going.
So one of the things, when I look at the climate sector, there are lots of actual organizations that focus on organizational effectiveness and driving change. There doesn't seem to be quite that maturity within the ageism sector. They're not, we've talked about old school clearinghouse, but we haven't talked about large organizations that fundraise and drive public service messages or campaign on this. Is that a failing or a failing of the ageism sector, so to speak?
I think one, it's just not a priority. Like when it comes to all these issues that people are thinking of day to day. It's just not a priority. And then two, I keep forgetting my other comment.
I always start, I said, I have three things to tell you, and I just have no idea what the three things are when I start, and I usually just fill it in. I just always want to have three. So I completely get where you're coming from, because I sometimes get to two, and I'm like, maybe they'll forget I said three. What do you think, Leanne?
I think it is a fail. It's an opportunity. I mean, I'm going to be a little optimistic here. It's an opportunity. Like I said before, every sector out there, aging intersects with it. Do you remember? Do you want to say it real quick?
Thank you. So I think part of it is also like getting the research to the people, right? And this is not just within this industry, but I think a lot in this industry is like getting the research that's all being done and presenting it in ways that are understandable by the average person, and able to take that research and apply it, turn it into action. So I think that's the one area that could be improved.
Yeah, that's smart. And I think I'll just say, like I said, every sector has a stake in this. And I always tell when I'm in academic audiences, the smart business student will differentiate herself from her classmates by leaning all the way into learning about our aging society. Same with doctors, same with marketers. There's a real differentiation and an opportunity to make a difference there.
And I'll be a little bit the Pollyanna again to say that it's true that the private sector has yet to rise to this challenge, but there are organizations out there doing great work, like the American Society on Aging, like the Age Equity Alliance, like Help Age International, the Center for Aging Better in the UK, which is behind that campaign. So again, it's important to recognize that there are organizations that are foregrounding, like the Stanford Longevity Center today and tomorrow, which is fantastic. It's wonderful to be here. And I will also point out AARP's deafening silence on this and say, they could really help to put ageism on the radar of the general public, pushing that public health campaign around the health benefits of addressing ageism. Going to keep putting it out there.
All right. I will put a word for AARP. They're here to support this conference and this
Here,
message.
here.
So, yeah. So thank you for that. But thank you for those words, Ashton. Let's play the next slide, which is, have you ever experienced ageism? Yeah. And then let's put the next slide up too. And at what age? So can you all see that? It's a little, yeah. I would say it's interesting to me that a lot of it's in midlife and earlier, right? I mean, I think that's socially, we associate ageism with the story you told, Leanne, about your grandmothers. We associate with old age, but that's not how people experience it. Maybe people in the workplace are experiencing younger. You've experienced it younger. What's your thoughts on this?
I was going to say it's probably also because of who filled out the survey. If people just haven't reached that age yet,
It's possible
to
right?
be able
Sure,
to
of course.
say.
Yeah. But I mean, sort of, I mean, I think ageism is not just for young people or old people anymore, right? It affects how we live our lives. I'm sort of curious about your reactions to that.
I mean, it never was just for old people. Colonial America was a gerontocracy. Old people held all the power. When I read that, I was like, really? I mean, I knew nothing, and it was really hard to believe. There's no all of the above option, and it's already, we've touched on how aging is gendered. Women are never the right age, right? Especially in a workforce context. First, we're too sexy, then we're too fertile, then we're not sexy or fertile, and it's over, right? So ageism affects all of us lifelong.
Yeah, okay. So we have about 9 minutes left. I'm gonna ask one last question. And then I want to make sure that there's time for questions from the audience. We'll take the first one from online, because otherwise they'll never get in. And then I want to make sure everyone here gets a chance for questions. Let me just ask this. Let's actually start taking questions, because I want to make sure that people get the chance. I love asking this group questions, but I want to make sure everyone gets that chance. So do we have questions? Where is our online? Oh, they're hidden in the corner. Do we have any questions yet from online? Okay. There are mic runners with microphones. There's a mic right here.
Thank you.
you. Okay, we have, so everyone get ready. We'll take this first question from online.
So one of the questions coming up from the online audience is how much of ageism is internal? So if you can elaborate a bit about how we internalize views versus getting views from the society around us.
Yeah, it's a great question. So it always reminds me of the cartoon Pogo. We've met the enemy and it is us. Who wants to take a shot at that question? How much is it?
I'll take a short shot. I mean, it is in all of us. I don't know how much of it, because it depends person to person, but if we don't reckon first with our own attitudes towards age and aging, that is an absolutely necessary first step to become aware of the ways in which we have been blinded, in which we might be colluding, strong word, and then to take that new awareness out.
Yeah, who hasn't said, boy, that's a senior moment, or something like that?
Yeah, just how to think about how you use the words old and young. To use them young as a substitute for insert good thing, and old for, maybe, it's never actually about age. You might be too lazy, you might be too experienced, you might be not in the mood, but someone older or younger than you can or cannot do that thing, right?
All right, questions in the room. I see the first hand over there. If you could stand up, please.
Hello? Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Denise. I'm 21. I go to college. And I've been in the world of intergenerational collaboration since I was 14 years old. And no matter how many, I just wrote a book when I was 18 about intergenerational collaboration as well. I've also been working on climate change, environmental sustainability. And one thing that I've experienced at every age is that people keep telling me, oh yeah, you're so young, you keep doing this, it's so cool. And I really like that, but I also feel like that age barrier and how I just feel like people see me a little bit less than what I actually am. And people keep telling me that it'll change next year. Oh yeah, when you're 20, people will take you seriously. When you're 21, people will take you seriously. And so I just want to ask the question, at what age were you actually taken seriously? And when did people stop assuming, not even assuming, but when did people stop using your younger age as a way to be like, oh, she doesn't really know, she has to wait. So that's my question.
I'm still waiting for people to take me seriously. So, but I think that's me, not my age. Pooja, why don't you take that on? And I'd actually love, it's a great question. Thank you. I'd love to hear everyone's answer on that.
I feel like, so how they've started to take me more seriously has been more by seeing the work that I've done and being like, okay, she's not just talking, she's walking the walk, right? So I think part of it is PR, like we're saying, right? So being those people that, write about, the different projects that you're working on, the stuff that you're doing. And then the other part of it is just knowing that it's their own bias, right? And like I said before, you got to just keep going, Leanne,
when did you think you started being taken seriously?
It changes depending on the room I'm in and the people in that room with me. And I think it's, there are times when using your age and putting your age forward can be beneficial and can be an asset to the conversation and to the authority that you bring to the conversation. There are times when that isn't the case. I think, it's a really good question, and it's dynamic. It's going to continue changing. I am 45, and just in the past month, I have been told that I'm wrong about feeling a certain way in a certain space because of my age. Ashton and I share a love of going clubbing, and that was quoted in an NPR piece. And I shared that I feel more invisible than I have in the past when I'm in a room full of young people. I got eviscerated on a subreddit for, no, you don't. I'm like, what? Okay. And, I often hear, oh, you're the CEO of the American Society on Aging, but you're so young. And okay, well, all right, well, when will I be old enough? And I have 3 degrees in gerontology, that probably means more than the number of candles on my birthday cake. So it's dynamic, it changes. And it's just something that we're all gonna have to contend with.
So actually, can I ask?
Great answer. It does. It depends on the room you're in,
Yeah, but let me ask you, let me add something on. Do you think the answer is different for men and women?
What?
Different for men and women.
Well, yes, to some degree, although a young guy starting out in the job market faces the same kind of scrutiny as a young, young woman, young bi person, whatever. Ageism, interestingly, is often the first form of prejudice that white men encounter later on, their first encounter with facing a barrier because of something they can't change about themselves. So, I mean, I want a world, and I think we all do, where we can name our age. It is an important thing about us, right? We want to be able to say the age we are, but ideally, and it's a big ask, to have that number be just another thing about us, like whether we live in Toledo, whether we're vegetarian, right? An important component of our identity, but that is stripped of positive or negative associations, so we can be judged by what we've done in the world and what we aspire to.
Yeah. Oh, lots of questions. All right, that's right there, please, and then we'll come to you.
Hi, terrific panel. Thank you. Friendly amendment. Ageism is kind of by definition a frowny face kind of issue, right? And just to sort of to contribute to that, a smiley face here is the range of opportunities. I was born in 1966, which means I'm 2 years after the official close of the baby boom cohort. And I used to joke with my friends that getting old is going to be great for me because the baby boom is going to have figured it all out. Well, the people in this room and Nancy Pelosi and Jane Fonda notwithstanding, not really, right? Like most of the cultural systems and institutional architectures that we inherit from the 20th century have yet to be reimagined for longer lives. And what I think is great about the Center for Longevity is the kind of fundamental optimism that this engenders. And most recently, I've been thinking about it's a huge business opportunity. I mean, I don't see the public sector or even the philanthropic sector being in the lead on this, but I do see opportunities for the business sector to take substantial leadership in redefining and renegotiating what longer lives mean. And I just wanted to put that out and see what you all think about that.
So, Leanne, I think you actually wanted to talk about the business sector. So this is your question.
Okay, yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it's the greatest business opportunity of the next few decades, to be honest. There's a supply of older people that need and want to work. There are segments of the older population with enormous spending power. And I want to sort of elevate a couple folks I think are getting it really right. Is Tim Parr in this room from Caddis yet?
He'll be here later.
There, hey, Tim. So if you're not aware, I'm just going to give you a commercial real quick. Caddis Eyewear. Look at caddislife.com. Tim and Caddis is doing an exceptional job of using aging as something cool, something to aspire to, a look and feel that feels exciting. Tim, I think you're getting it really right. I was at a music festival and was chatting with Andy Levine. He runs a company called Real Topeka Live. He produces music festivals, and he told me, I said, I can't help but notice that there's a lot of older people here, and that is super cool. He's like, it is entirely intentional. I want to cater to the 45 plus market. He's not saying it. He's not, announcing it, but he's curating an experience that taps into that demographic, and it's awesome. I think, there's Kohler plumbing fixtures came to the American Society on Aging's conference last year. They deployed a special projects team. They're doing new design work to appeal to people across the age span and people with changing needs regardless of their age. So I applaud them. I think there's real signs of progress, but huge opportunity for more.
Yeah, all right. So we're out of time, but we're gonna take one question there, and this is gonna be a lightning round. So you get to ask your question, and then we'll.
Thank you, Ken. I just want to make a comment, given the focus, and thank you for continuing this terrific series. Very, very impactful. I'm going to make a historical comment. This is the 50th anniversary of the publication of a book by Robert Butler in early 1975, which was entitled Why Survive? Being Old in America, for which Robert Butler won the Pulitzer Prize in nonfiction. He was a practicing psychiatrist at the time in Washington, D.C. In that book, he coined the term ageism 50 years ago. And here we are. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so let's actually do a little bit of a lightning round, starting with you, Ashton, which is, and I know like Robert Butler was very impactful in your life. So maybe if you could even channel him a little bit, maybe ask all of you just like one thing you want people to know coming, framing not just as a problem, but it's sort of a call to action. What would you say to people in this room and online? What do you want them to do coming out of this conference? One thing for each of you.
Well, thank you for that beautiful intro. I had the privilege of working with Robert Butler near the end of his life, and he was very important to me. And he coined the term ageism to piggyback on the civil rights movement and the second wave women's movement, racism and sexism. So I would like people to think about the fact that if we are going to have a world without ageism, it means supporting every struggle for equal rights. If you are working on climate change, which involves every human on the planet, if you are working to be less racist, if you are working for LGBTQI rights, all those things, making the world better for people in any of those groups makes it a better world to grow old in. We are predominantly white and I'm guessing pretty privileged in this room. You can't retrofit diversity. And the way we make it is through building relationships, slow, awkward work with people who don't look like us, find out what matters to them and how we can support it. And then eventually, maybe they'll, figure out what you're interested in. So we need to build a movement against ageism that represents us all.
Thank you. Leanne?
Make this a we conversation and demand an age-inclusive society. Demand it.
So 3 things. One is to be okay with intergenerational friendships. I've got a few of those, and they're some of
Absolutely.
the greatest ones that
Make
I've
friends
got.
of all ages.
Yeah. Then sharing stories with family members of different ages, right? Like grandkids, nieces, nephews, etc. And then challenging jokes and comments that are made that are ageist when they are made. And then our org is doing research on intergenerational collaboration. So if anybody's interested in that, definitely come find me later. Yeah.
And tell us the name of your organization again, because we've all
Youth
done
Climate Collaborative.
Youth Climate Collaborative. Okay. Well, thank you all for a great conversation. I couldn't really think of a better conversation to start off the conference. So thank you all so much for this. And you know what we're going to do? Everyone did a little self-promotion there. I'm going to do that too. Can we play the video, the Grand People video, which I was going to ask you about, but ran out of time while we switch.
keep telling us we're past our use-by date. Women over 45 are treated second rate. We're here to let you know that every oldie is of worth. We vote and fight for what is right and give our ideas birth. We're not dead. That's what we said. We're not dead. Not yet. Forever let us raise our voices high. Life is like a marathon. We will race the sweat. Don't be fooled. Here's a threat. We're not dead yet. Lost my job because they decided they wanted to pay younger people peanuts. I'd met some of the people from the theatre group and they were so dynamic and so engaged and so exciting. And I went, that's what I want. Sweet bananas, we may not last that long, but what we give is lots to fear. We're feisty and we're strong. I came to work as a volunteer for the Older Women's Network in the office, and I could hear the, laughter, singing, general hilarity going on in the room next door. And then Fiona came and sang one of the songs in the office, a song called Not Dead Yet. It was a new song she'd just written. I thought, wow, that is so, those words, they're so fantastic. And, next week I joined the group. We're tough and full of passion. We are the wrinkle set. We won't shut up. We won't give in. We're not dead yet. We don't sugarcoat aging because, we are writing from lived experience.
So we kind of look at these aspects of what's part of our lives now in a realistic way, but trying to treat topics with sensitivity, but not being too worthy at the same time. The difference that being a member of this group has made for many women in the group. Many women are widowed, divorced, have health issues, and to be able to be embraced in a group where there's no judgment. You know, you might not be able to sing very well, but don't worry, we'll find you a role. And to see the transformation is incredible, from people who came extremely shy, not sure whether this is really for them, to now being able to sing a solo.
Mostly we're between 60 and 90. We had a 90-year-old traveling from 4 hours away, and that's 4 hours one way. That's
Yeah.
how special the group is.
Yeah.